Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the broadcast this evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator.
Well, I guess I'll start today with a little bit of mixed feelings. One, I didn't get the camera to capture you regarding the match, but I'm sure that the mood would have been somewhat suppressed on that one. So before we even go into some of the topics that I have for you this evening, sir, what was your reaction?
Well, if of course I wanted us to win, to carry the cup. But recall what I said last week about how the Nigerian team, the way they played all through the festival, to some extent, I mean, if I was still teaching in a university and I have a PhD student, I will ask him to compare the attitude of the players with the attitude of Nigeria itself. I have often told people that what baffles me about this country is that when we get to that junction where turning left leads to greatness and turning right leads to more confusion, somehow, out of the blue, we turn right, as if we turn right into confusion. I mean, I can give many examples, you know. We had Murtala Mohammed, and we thought, great, you know, we're going to do things the way Nigeria is supposed to do things, and we are going to go places. And then it gets cut down, and we end up with an alternative. And then, you know, we had we had a time, you know, Shagari versus Awolowo. I mean, it was clear about who had the vision for a great Nigeria. And somehow, again, we lost it. So, as I was watching the match, I didn't see the fire in our players. Honestly, I didn't. I praised them for getting as far as they did. I praise them. But, you know, there are times you think of divine intervention. Côte d'Ivoire, who had in fact been kicked out of the tournament, but under the rule of the best of the losers, was then brought back in. They played, I mean, as if their life depended on it. We fired only one shot at the goal, and that was the goal we scored. And I have complained about the technique of the coach. I'm not saying all of this because we lost, but I also know another coach in my favorite team in the British English League. They adopted the same style. They were not firing shots. Instead, it was like they could dribble into the net. Even when time was running out against them. And I've watched a lot of matches in my life where whenever the time is running out, you will see the emergency in the feet of the losing team, firing shots right, left, just upon the chance that one may skip past the goalkeeper and go in. We were not firing shots. The statistics showed it. Only one shot at the goal. And it seems to me as if, again, like Nigeria, we got to that junction and we decided it was not worth it, that we didn't want it. So there is a lot to say comparing the way the team played. But here I am in front of you. So obviously I survived it, just like I have survived many of the ups and downs of this country. So well, there are other tournaments ahead, the Olympics, World Cup. Let's see how it goes.
For the next one, I'm sure we'll make some good progress there. But before we leave Nigeria, I think one of the things that that struck me is the way football has always united Nigeria. But then looking at that and the backdrop of people complaining about hunger in Nigeria, and they had the idea that things would change. But for that moment, it seemed like everyone suspended the troubles of the moment to focus on football. And now that football is over, the cries of people who are suffering under the weight of the economy is now coming back up. What do you have to say about that, sir?
We have never exploited the capability of football to unite and develop this country. We haven't. We focus on the big tournaments. Supposing you get a head of state, who decides? Who decides to build a stadium in every ward in the country? And he gets all these millionaires, billionaires, or whatever, to sponsor a match every Saturday, even if it's government that is going to pay initially for 2 clubs per ward. And you will have the stadium also in every state. You will have the stadium in every zone, so that, every Saturday, not just once in 6 months, every Saturday, youth, everybody will gather at the stadium and watch a match. Mini leagues in every ward in Nigeria. First of all, the employment that will provide in keeping the stadium, each stadium, nice and ready for tournaments. The sense of camaraderie to build among the youth in that world. And as I've said, you have graduated the world, state, zone before you get to the national level. And at each one of these, cups are sponsored. Now, I say this because when I was in Igbobi College, we had matches among schools in Lagos. Igbobi versus St. Greg's, King's College versus Ahmadiyya, Methodist Boys High School versus Baptist High School. We were playing this for Principals Cup. And now, I know they've brought this back in Lagos, but I don't know to what extent other states have copied this. So that Saturday, in a way, you forget hunger, you forget kidnapping. I'm sure even the kidnappers, will also be cheering wherever they are. And if we did this, the employment also that it will create, the jobless boys who you will, find with talent for the clubs and so on. So we've never, that's why I said we've never really exploited the capacity of football to develop the essence of Nigerian unity and to develop our economic potential. We've just never.
All right, sir. Let me move away from Nigeria, and because there were quite a few bits and pieces of information about Nigeria, some quite sad, that impacted the financial sector of the country, and quite tragic. But at the same time, I want to go to NATO, sir. I want to go to NATO because there's an interesting development that is evolving on the NATO side of things, some of which were probably sparked by some of the comments former President Trump made about Russia potentially attacking countries and America standing by. Let me start from there. What do you have to say about the comment from former President Trump regarding NATO and Russia potentially having its way with NATO countries without the US stepping in?
I think maybe we should move the studio from London to Afghanistan. That way we will get more universally driven issues. What's new in what his name, in Trump said? He said this, 8 years ago when he was still in power. He insulted NATO at every summit that he attended. His language is not what should then become a topic to distract, serious, or to attract serious discussion, because this is not new. Okay. Number two, having said that, as a former foreign minister, I think that when you belong to an organization, you should pay your dues. Don't expect other nations to carry the burden of paying your dues. And then when the time comes to vie for positions, you are the ones who they want to be called to occupy key positions in the organization. And yet you haven't paid. You don't pay. This is not a NATO syndrome. The United Nations has that same problem. There are people who are years behind in paying their dues. And yet they are the ones who will put forward their citizens to contest. The AU, African Union, has the same problem that is referring to a NATO. So ECOWAS has the same problem. And I think maybe occasionally it's good to have a Trump who says it like it is. I don't think Americans like paying other people's bills when it comes to membership of an organization. I don't think Nigeria likes paying bills of other countries, whether it's in ECOWAS or AU. When, they would then become, they then become occupants, of critical positions in the organization. But it's not something that's peculiar to NATO. And I think that a lot of heads of states share what, in fact, probably privately, they are cheering Trump for having the guts to say what they will not say, but they feel. So, but there is no doubt, no American president, he will sit by and watch Russia attack a NATO member, and not only get NATO to do nothing, but to egg on Russia. He will be impeached within 24 hours. However, people should pay their bills.
One thing that struck me, sir, is that way back 2014, only 3 countries were meeting the mandated 2% of GDP contribution to NATO. Over the last few years, it's now gone up to, I think it's 18 countries who are now pledging that they're going to meet that minimum 2% of GDP. And what struck me is a while ago, we had a session where we talked about the military-industrial complex and things like that, and how that could contribute to the development of the economy. Do you see any development coming out of this potential increase? Because when you look at the areas that are being destroyed by war, there's increased military spending, but I'm not sure we could regard some of those economies as experiencing development at this point in time. What would you say to that point, sir?
No, well, 11 have met their 2% target. And as you rightly said in your intro, 18 have pledged to meet the target. Once Russia attacked Ukraine, you saw an increase in the membership of NATO. And this is going to be reflected in people, when it comes to budgetary allocation, up their contribution to try and meet that 2%, if not go beyond it. Because there is a fear of aggression, a fear of invasion. a fear of instability in Europe. It doesn't matter the state of your economy. People are being told you have a choice. You pay for the guns and the tanks and whatever have you, or you pay for your life if war comes. People don't like it. It is a traditional debate between bullets and milk. And unfortunately, when the war comes, it's the milk that disappears and the bullets that appear. So people are saying it is better for us to buy more bullets now and deter the aggressor rather than wait until the time that he comes in. I have been, and this will not surprise members, colleagues on the platform, I have been an advocate of being prepared for war rather than wait for the war to come and then you start scrambling. So I'm not surprised that these budgetary allocations to the military have gone up, not just in Europe, but all across. I think that India's budgetary allocation has overtaken Britain. I think India is now number 3. In the latest report of the IISS, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, we also may look at Jane's, which is another publication where the state of military preparedness of countries are published annually. It's a reflection of the instability in the world. It's a reflection of the fact that there is no part of the world now that is safe from military action. And governments, they find themselves in a position where they have to pick bullets above milk.
So you were right in your comment about India now having overtaken the United Kingdom, according to the report by the ISS. But how about Nigerian spending on defense? Would you say that if we take the proportion, would you say Nigeria is spending enough on defense to be able to deter any threats, both internally and externally?
No. I thought we were moving away from Nigeria, from what you said earlier. Anybody who followed me from when I was at the Institute of International Affairs will know that I've always argued that the state of Nigerian military should be such that it can defend Nigeria. And by defense, I mean that it will have the capability to inflict on the aggressor unacceptable damages. So I'm not saying that the Nigerian army should be equal to the Egyptian army or the South African army or whatever other country in Africa that we may have in mind, but that the Nigerian military should have the capability of inflicting unacceptable to the aggressor, not to Nigerians. And there is no army that wants to lose. You know, armies do this exercise. If we are going into this, if we are going into this theater, what is the percentage of our forces that we are prepared to lose in this exercise? A battalion or a brigade? And that is factored into the decision whether to invade or not. So the Nigerian government, the Nigerian NGOs, the Nigerian institutes will all have to be involved in this study. Who is the most powerful country in Africa? Is X. Their capability to invade is this. Therefore, the Nigerian army must have the capability to inflict, in stopping it, that unacceptable damage, so that when it gets to that level, the aggressor pulls back, that it's not worth it losing more forces. But right now, I laughed the other day when I saw, I mentioned the name of the security force, the drone that it was showing on television as an improvement in their arsenal. This is a drone that you will buy from Amazon as a Christmas present for your son or your daughter. He was showing it, and he was rather proud of it. I felt whether this man has seen real drones in the security armament of other countries. It's going to mean, of course, money being allocated. The problem is going to be, will the money allocated be used for what it is needed for? I'm not naive enough not to accept that there are leakages in our budgetary allocation, and people get away with these leakages. When we had the first coup, they were talking about the 10%ers, that they were the ones destroying Nigeria. By 10%ers, they meant people who will demand 10% of the budgetary allocation. Now, governors, ministers, whatever, demand 90% of the budget. And the remaining 10% is supposed to build the road or buy military equipment rather than new ones, refurbished ones, and give them to the troops, while the commander pockets the 90%. So while arguing for more budgetary allocations to build up, and anyway, you could say, does Nigeria have big aggressors? Is it not Boko Haram and the jihadists and so on that we are fighting? But what is the perception of Nigeria by surrogate countries of France in this area?
Let me move back to the United States, and we look at the issue that the Republican Party and the GOP there are flagging a national security threat that is opening up on a new frontier. And the fact that they called for the declassification of intelligence material relating to that threat. What is your view on the declassification of such material at this point in time when we have major wars that are going on?
I hope that my colleagues on this platform will please forgive my non-diplomatic language. The Republicans have become lunatics, frankly. And to have a major political party controlling one arm of the Congress, that not only in their espousal of these crazy ideas of theirs, get attention, but they are even in a position to block legislation, to block budgetary allocations. And within this party in Congress, only eight gentlemen, well, presumably ladies and gentlemen who are legislators, are the ones who are mounting the roadblocks, not the whole of the Republican Party, but because of the way the game is played in Congress, other members allow them to have their way. How can you declassify intelligence information? Are they aware of the consequences of that? Do you know that by declassifying intelligence, you could trace who gave the information to the Americans? You could actually, because the other countries you are dealing with have counterintelligence factors or factions or organizations whose job is to ensure they ferret out people who leak information or people who are agents of the other side. And you risk the life of people who have helped you. Are they aware of that? It boggles the mind, because people who normally help, if A tries to recruit agents from B, but the people you are trying to recruit, fear that one day the information they are giving you may turn up on the pages of the newspaper by tracing back when that information was given and how the information went from table to table. You can identify who leaked it. Have the Republicans thought of this? They really want to destroy the United States. I don't think they're really interested in reforming the United States. I don't think they're interested in a greater America. They're just interested in destroying by coming up with crazy ideas. It reminds me of the last days of the Roman Empire, the kind of debates that were going on in the Roman Senate took no cognizance of the fact that, Germanic tribes were already mounted and were at the gates. It didn't take cognizance of that. And instead of how do we save the how do we save Rome itself? Forget the empire. The Germanic tribes have already overrun that. How do we save Rome itself? They were debating who becomes the next emperor, who becomes, how much do we demand from X to become the next emperor? And that's really what this reminds me of. And finally, Rome itself was overrun and destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Somebody has a point here. This person, Alabi Williams, he said, Prof, sir, are you then on the side of Trump's taunting of NATO to wake up and stop depending overly on the US? After all, NATO was first of all more of stabilizing Europe, despite his lack of diplomats. I think you already answered that question when you talked about this, but I don't know if you want to respond directly to the point, sir.
No, but no. This is the problem with issues. What NATO contributes to the defense of Europe, you have to factor that into the fact that not financially, but in terms of personnel, it helps the United States to maintain its status as a world power. If European states were not in NATO and were not contributing whatever little share, but they have troops on the ground, and now they are demanding of the Americans weapons and so on, Russia would have, or what was the Soviet Union at that time, would have overrun Europe. Or the cost to the Americans of them having to fight the Soviet Union in Europe after the Second World War will be greater than what American is contributing to NATO now. So the balancing has to be done in a sophisticated way. If America wants to give up on being a superpower and just wants to be an isolationist, then you don't care. And that's what Trump was saying, that he will even encourage Russia to go ahead and do whatever it wants to do in Europe. It's not going to take Trump more than 2 minutes to realize how dangerous is the doctrine. I don't think he means it. I don't think he means it. And I'm not saying that NATO has not been a positive in as far as maintaining stability in Europe. NATO has been a positive force.
Thank you, sir. Let me go to Ethiopia, back to Africa, and talk a little bit about the AU summit that's going to be taking place in there. And some have questioned the choice of Ethiopia and what Ethiopia represents in terms of the wars that have taken place there not too long ago, and questioned why Ethiopia would be a good location to be holding the summit at this point in time. What is your take about the AU, sir, and how the AU has been running her affairs, given relatively quiet on the scene, I would say? But what's your take, sir?
I've read some of the criticism of the AU in terms of its location in Addis Ababa. These are written by people who have no sense of history. We could also complain about the location of the UN in New York at the time when blacks were still being hanged in the United States. At the time when even black diplomats were having problems eating in restaurants. We could have said, why not take it to Switzerland or any other country where racism is not as, it's not as frontal as it was in the United States. But there were reasons. If you are going to have a United Nations, a credible one, where all the potential troublemakers are going to be there, New York was the compromise. At the time when the OAU, this is the predecessor of the AU, at the time it was being formed, the role of Emperor Haile Selassie, the role of NASA, the role of Nkrumah made Addis Ababa, and the fact, the historical fact that Addis Ababa was one African country that was never colonized, conquered. It had wars with Italy, and Italian troops did overrun parts of Addis Ababa, parts of Ethiopia. But Ethiopia stood its ground. And so that was why Addis Ababa was picked as the capital of the OAU. And then when the AU was formed, Addis Ababa continued to be the capital. You see, you will always have, I will even call intellectual or journalistic troublemakers. They are just looking for negative things to say. And they will be then the first one to point out about disintegration, about civil war, about this and about that. Yes, since then, Addis Ababa or Ethiopia has gone and is going through is going through hard times, let's put it that way. Okay, if you remove Addis Ababa, if you remove the AU from Addis Ababa, in which African country are you then going to locate it that does not have problems? And that then becomes something to distract our minds and our attention from what we should be doing in Africa. We said it on this platform that Africa itself, like the Middle East, is in a state of instability. Foreign actors are helping their domestic surrogates in activities to destabilize Africa. It's going on all over. ECOWAS is being destabilized. Look at what Senegal had just done. Senegal, that we thought was one of the pillars of stability in Africa, somehow they've come up with an agent who would rather destroy his own country than go away in the tradition of Senghor and other presidents of Senegal. You cannot persuade me that the president of Senegal is doing this on his own. You cannot persuade me. When he knows that he has troops who can overthrow him legitimately for breaking the Constitution. There's some madness in the heads of someone like that. And from what I am hearing, that even in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ivory Coast, things are not as stable as we think it is when it comes to presidential succession, because another election is supposed to be around the corner. So I have no problems with locating AU in Addis Ababa. We will have problems. We will solve the problems.
Someone is asking a question here, sir. This is in relation to the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas in the United States Homeland Secretary. And they want to know what your view is on that and the potential impact of such a vote in terms of precedents for the future.
It's setting a bad precedent. It's never happened before. It's not going anywhere because it must then be tried by the Senate. And you need 2/3. I suppose that to be 66 senators to convict him and remove him. The Democrats control the Senate. So you are not going to get that 2/3. But what worries me is this. What image? No, that's not what worries me. Because if America doesn't care about its own image, I don't know why I should lose any sleep over it. What worries me is what lesson is being transmitted to other countries who may not know who may not understand the intricacies and the kind of games being played in the United States, and who, before you know it, are now going to be impeaching their ministers simply because the ministers has not settled them over projects. When superpowers misbehave, the consequences in terms of lessons being transmitted to global South, that is what keeps me awake.
Let me go to the Middle East. Things have been going from bad to worse, to worse, to worse. And it seems that all the talks to de-escalate the situation there have not helped. And now we're starting to see Israel bomb deep into Lebanon. And Israel is now going into the Rafah crossing area to attack Hamas there. What is your take on the state of the war so far?
Well, there is a proverb in this part of the world. Others may have the same proverb. They said, if you find a masquerade dancing in the middle of the road, and you look around and you wonder to what music is he dancing? The musician is in the forest that is pouring on the masquerade. Israel, as Israel, does not have the capacity to defy the world. It's because it is backed by, its backing comes from a superpower. It's the United States that is defying the world, not Israel. What is Israel? It's the United States. As soon as the condemnable Hamas action happened, the United States deployed two naval fleets, to that area, even before the Israel started its own counteraction against, quote unquote, their Hamas, which also meant destroying Gaza. America has a store of weapons in Israel for its own use in case trouble breaks out in that part of the world. It gave Israel access to it. And here comes everybody, including the American president, the British Prime Minister, the president of the European Union. Here come all of them to Tel Aviv, saying, we will back Israel, we are backing you, we are watching your back. Whatever you decide to do, we are beside you. So it's not Israel that is defying the world. It's the United States that is defying the world. The South Africans, again, 3 days ago, filed another petition before the ICJ, telling the ICJ that this genocide is about to happen. Israel has boxed the Palestinians into that strip next to Egypt. And they have said they're going in and do whatever it is that it takes. And South Africa is telling the World Court, well, you have to do something. You have to issue a declaration stopping Israel from now committing actual genocide. 3 days ago, they filed the report. So really, but Biden is election year. We said it on this program. I can see some hands up.
Yes, I was just going to, unfortunately, sorry, I don't know your name. It's just iPhone. But do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and make your comment, sir?
My name is A. Lawal from Met Club. Good evening. Yeah, thank you, Prof. You have already spoken the truth that the Western nations, including America, are backing Israel. And it is quite obvious that Israel is not acting on its own. I look at the whole thing as the economic move from the western part of the world, because the two parties in America both the Democrats and the Republicans, they are supporting Israel because this Trump is in support of. And then Biden cannot deny Israel now because they are going to face election very soon. They don't want to lose election supporting Israel. And they are doing all these things just because.
Oh, we lost him there, sir. I think he had bad internet connection there, but I think he made his point
he did
before he dropped off there.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one last question in the 2 minutes we have, and someone has just sent something direct here, and this is the reaction of the Australian Prime Minister to the issue of Julian Assange, who has been in prison for about 5 years now. The Australian Prime Minister has said enough is enough, and at the end of the day, Assange is an Australian citizen. What do you say to that, sir? Because the issue is about extradition to the US to face charges on the issue that happened many years back now. What is your view on Australia now standing up to say enough is enough? He's an Australian.
Well, again, I think, if you let an issue drag on, have I used the tortoise syndrome story on this platform? If I have, forgive me if I repeat it, because it explains my answer to the Assange something. The tortoise stole yam of his in-law, his father-in-law. He was caught. They tied him to a tree in the morning, and everybody going to the farm or to the market was cursing him. Thief, robber, stupid man. Can you imagine stealing from his father-in-law? Another kind of thing. In the evening, when people were returning from the farm and from the market, they found the tortoise still tied to the tree. I said, wait a minute. Did he kill somebody? In any case, the yam is stole. You're not going to use it to feed the daughter of this. This must be a very wicked father-in-law. The attitude turned. It was now pro-tortoise. So you've dragged this Assange thing for so long. Let the man go. Let him go. Did he kill somebody? Did he start a war? No. So let me know. We know why the Americans are so mad that he released their diplomatic cables. All right, but are the Americans now not overreacting? The same thing, Israel is overreacting. Let Assange go. It's not an issue anymore. We have gone over it.
On that note, I'll end the program tonight, sir. I'd be thinking about that story again and again for the rest of the weekend now. I'll find out where I would use that same analogy. Well, like they say, things like that only come from the elders. So thank you very much, sir. I will start talking like that, and people will start referring to me as an elder too.
You have to be over 70. So no hurry.
These days, I can have an official age. If we can reduce the official age, we should be able to increase it too. Thank you, sir. Good night, sir. Good night, everyone. We'll be back same time next week. Good night.